There comes a time when your heart grows tired, tired of praying, tired of hoping, tired of believing. The mind whispers, maybe this is just how it ends. But I am here to remind you, no, this is not how it ends. For the one who shaped light from darkness, who parted seas, who breathed life into dust, he is the same now as he was then. You do not serve a God of maybe or a God of logic. You serve the God of the impossible, and he is not intimidated by your circumstances. The world will teach you to walk by what you see, but that is not your path. You were never meant to live from the outside in. Your power is inward, what you dare to believe in the silence of your own mind. That is what will shape the world around you. When you say, I believe, you are not making a wish. You are aligning yourself with the greatest power in existence. Not with effort, not with struggle, but with the assumption that what you ask for is already done. It is done. You must believe not when the evidence appears, but before. You must close your eyes and feel the relief, the joy, the completion. Now, that feeling becomes the bridge between the invisible and the visible. You walk by faith across that bridge. Ask yourself, what have you buried because it felt too far gone? What dream did you once water with hope but now walk past like a grave? Go back, unearth it, because nothing is too hard for the God who moves without limits. When you say it's impossible, what you really mean is, I can't see how. But understand, you were never meant to see how. That's not your job. Your work is to believe, to feel it real, to live in the end of it as if it's already done. Doubt will come knocking, fear will try to whisper in your ear. But you must return to your inner sanctuary and say, I remember who I serve, the God who calls things that are not as though they are. Your current reality does not get the final say. It is only a reflection of your previous state. But the moment you change your inner state, everything outside must follow. It has no choice. For you live in a world not of facts, but of belief made manifest. Believe again. Not with desperation, but with quiet assurance. Not with effort, but with rest. Rest in the knowing that what you have imagined is already being formed. The pieces are moving, the door is opening, the blessing is coming. He is not delayed, he is precise. So return to your faith. Dare to assume the miracle is done, because when you align with the impossible becomes normal. And when it arrives, because it will, you will say, it always was mine. I only had to believe again. Faith is not born in the eyes. It is born in the imagination. The moment you understand that your outer world is shaped not by what you see, but by what you believe, you begin to step into true power. The world will always show you what appears to be real. It will reflect limitation, delays, opposition. But if you accept the visible as final, you close yourself off from the greater truth, the unseen that waits to be expressed. When you close your eyes and imagine, you are not playing pretend. You are engaging in the highest form of creation. Everything you now touch, wear, live in, or drive was once just a thought, a silent idea, a mental picture. It existed in the unseen before it appeared in form. This is the law of life. All things begin within, and faith is the bridge between the invisible and the visible. Faith is the willingness to hold the vision of your desire when there is no evidence to support it. It is the inner knowing that what you have felt, imagined, and accepted as real in your mind must find its way into your outer experience. Not because you begged for it, not because you forced it, but because you dared to believe it was already yours. When you close your eyes and enter the state of the wish fulfilled, you are stepping into a spiritual principle that governs all creation. You are no longer asking if it will happen. You are living from the place where it already has. You walk through the door in your mind. You wear the clothes. You spend the money. You receive the call. You feel the embrace. You let your senses be saturated in the outcome long before it touches the physical world. This is not fantasy. This is the blueprint of all manifestation. The problem is not that people don't desire good things. The problem is that they look for confirmation in the wrong place. They search for evidence in the physical before the seed has taken root in the unseen. They stare at the ground and say, "Where's the tree?" But faith understands that the tree was planted the moment you believed, and the fruit will come in its time if you don't dig up the soil with doubt. When your inner world contradicts your outer world, you must side with your imagination. You must look with the eyes of faith and say, "Though I see lack, I accept abundance. Though I feel fear, I dwell in peace. Though it looks impossible, I know it is done." And in doing so, you shift your state. The longer you dwell in that inner state, the more the outer world begins to conform. It bends. It rearranges. Not because you struggled, but because your inner acceptance became magnetic. Faith is the sculptor. It chisels your world quietly and precisely. So close your eyes, not to escape, but to create. For what you see in the unseen is more powerful than what the world calls real. Believe it there, and it must appear here. That is the law. What you call impossible is only something you have not yet accepted as true. It is not outside of reach. It is outside of your belief. The moment you recognize this, the impossible begins to lose its power over you. You were never designed to be limited by appearances. You were created to walk in alignment with the divine, with the unseen intelligence that makes all things possible. The reason something feels impossible is not because it truly is. It is because your mind has been conditioned to expect only what it already knows. You look at your past, your surroundings, your patterns, and you say, "I've never seen it happen, so maybe it can't." But that is not truth. That is just memory. You're measuring your potential by what you've already experienced, forgetting that the divine is not bound by your history. There is a deeper truth you once knew, perhaps even as a child, before the world trained you to doubt. A truth that says you are limitless because you were made in the image of the limitless. A truth that whispers, nothing is too hard, nothing is too far, nothing is too late. But over time, as life throws disappointment after disappointment, you forget. You forget how powerful you are when you believe. You forget that what feels unreachable to the mind is not unreachable to spirit. To God, there is no such thing as hard or easy. No big miracle or small miracle. Creation flows from the same power. Regardless of what it looks like to you, a healed body, a restored relationship, a financial breakthrough, all of it is the same to the infinite. The only difference is how deeply you believe it can be done. Your belief system acts like a filter. It either welcomes the unseen into form or blocks it with fear and doubt. So when something feels impossible, ask yourself, not "can this happen?" but "have I allowed myself to believe it can?" You'll often find that the only thing standing between you and the thing you desire is the gap between your truth and your conditioning. The impossible is not a wall, it is a fog. It is an illusion created by repetition and fear. It dissolves the moment you bring awareness to it. When you dare to say, "This is unfamiliar but not impossible," you begin to shift your state. You begin to return to the deeper truth. The divine lacks nothing. And you, being an extension of that divine power, are not here to wish and hope for scraps of goodness. You are here to call forth the life that already exists in potential. You do not need to fight for the impossible. You simply need to remember it is possible. So stop asking whether it can be done. Start imagining what it feels like after it is done. Return to the truth you forgot. What feels unreachable is only waiting for you to remember who you are and who walks with you. And in that remembering, the impossible becomes reality. Hope waits, faith assumes. There is a world of difference between the two. Hope says maybe one day. Faith says it is already mine. The shift happens the moment you stop asking and start receiving in your spirit. The moment you stop standing outside the door, knocking, and instead walk inside and take your place as though you belong there. That is the secret to answered prayer. Not words, not effort, but assumption. The inner acceptance that what you desire is already done. When you assume the feeling of the answered prayer, you are not daydreaming. You are aligning yourself with a spiritual law far greater than any physical condition. You are saying, I may not see it yet, but I know it is real. I may not touch it yet, but I can feel it within me. I may not have the evidence, but I carry the experience. And this inner experience becomes the blueprint for your external world. You must feel it as though you have already received it. Feel the peace of the healing. Feel the joy of the restoration. Feel the abundance flowing freely. Feel the love, the relief, the satisfaction now. Because the feeling is the key. It is the language of creation. It speaks louder than words. The moment you enter into the feeling of your fulfilled desire, you shift your state of being. And when you shift within, everything outside must mirror it. Most people pray from lack. They speak as if what they want is far away. They hope something will change. But nothing changes until you change. Nothing moves until you move in consciousness. The universe does not respond to begging. It responds to certainty. And certainty comes from assumption. Not forced, but quiet, confident, still. Ask yourself, what would you feel like if the prayer was already answered? What would your posture be? How would you walk, speak, think, breathe? Would there still be anxiety in your chest? Would you still feel lack in your spirit? Or would you relax? Would you smile without a reason? Would you give thanks because the matter is settled? That is the state you must enter. That is where the transformation begins, not in the doing, but in the being. You do not have to manipulate the outside world. You only have to change your inner stance. When you dwell in the state of the answered prayer, without wavering, without checking for results, you activate the unseen hand that moves mountains quietly. You were never meant to live as a beggar before God. You were meant to live as a co-creator, a channel through which the divine expresses. So assume it, not later, now. Assume the feeling of the life you long for. Assume the end result. Feel the prayer already answered. And when you do, hold it. Walk with it. Trust in silence. Because the moment you accept it as real in your inner world, life begins to rearrange. The unseen goes to work, and what once seemed far away begins to show up. Because it was always yours. What you call limitation is often just the boundary of your own understanding. It is not a wall in reality, it is a wall in thought. You look at your circumstances, your resources, your abilities, and you say, this is all I have, this is all I can do. But you forget that your limitation is not God's limitation. You forget that the one who created the universe did not need material approval or permission. He simply imagined, and it was. You may feel small. You may feel like you don't have enough strength, time, or opportunity. But the divine does not operate according to your capacity. He works according to His. And His power is not reduced by your insecurity or lack. The problem is never what He can do. The question is, what will you allow yourself to believe He can do through you? Too often you judge the possible by what you've seen. You limit your faith to what makes sense. But the one who created stars out of silence does not ask for your logic. He asks for your trust. If you can believe without needing to see, if you can surrender the how and embrace the what, you unlock a force that knows no boundaries. You say, I am not qualified, and He says, I don't need qualifications. You say, it's too late, and He replies, I'm not bound by time. You say, there's no way, and He reminds you, I am the way. Your mental blocks are not His problem, they are yours to release. The moment you stop trying to shrink God down to the size of your fear, you begin to rise into the life He's already designed for you. You were not meant to carry the burden of figuring it all out. You were meant to believe, rest, and walk as if the outcome is certain, because with Him, it is. The divine does not need what you think is missing. If you lack the connection, the money, the experience, it doesn't matter. All He needs is your surrender, your willingness to say, I don't see the path, but I trust the destination. That trust opens doors, that faith makes room, that inner shift tears down barriers that you once believed were permanent. You must stop thinking in terms of your limits and start thinking in terms of God's abundance. The impossible is only impossible when you believe you must do it alone. But the moment you remember who walks with you, what once looked immovable begins to move. So the next time your mind whispers, you can't, answer back, but God can. And not only can He, He will, through your belief, through your obedience, through your decision to let faith speak louder than fear. What limits you mentally does not restrict the one who brings light from darkness and life from dust. Your limits are only real if you make them your truth. But if you shift your vision, if you align with the limitless source within you, you will see what once felt unreachable come to life. Not by might, not by effort, but by faith. You were never meant to carry the weight of the how. That burden belongs to something far greater than your mind can comprehend. Your role is not to force the process, but to trust the outcome. You are the vessel, not the source. You are the channel through which the power flows, but you are not the power itself. When you try to control every detail, when you obsess over timelines and strategies, you close yourself off from the mystery and wisdom of divine order. The moment you surrender the need to figure it all out, you step into alignment with something far more intelligent and capable than human logic. That alignment is where miracles unfold. Not in control, but in trust. You don't need to know how it will come. You only need to know what you want and assume the end with quiet confidence. The how is not yours to understand, only to receive. The seed doesn't ask how it will become a tree. It simply surrenders to the soil, the light, the rain. It trusts the process. So must you. Let go of the need to manipulate, to force, to push. The divine does not need your strategies. It needs your cooperation. It needs your agreement. And that agreement comes when you dwell in the feeling of the fulfilled desire, as if it has already happened. Your imagination is the tool, not your hands. Your belief is the engine, not your planning. The more you try to micromanage the unfolding, the more resistance you create. Why? Because worry is a signal that you've forgotten who the source is. The source never doubts. It never questions its ability to bring the unseen into being. The source simply is. Your job is to hold the vision, to remain faithful to the end you desire, and to act only when prompted, not from fear, but from inspiration. Stop asking when. Stop asking through whom. Stop watching the clock and measuring the distance. Time is no obstacle to the one who exists beyond it. Your alignment is what collapses time. Your faith is what makes the impossible suddenly possible. You are not the creator of the blessing. You are the receiver. And to receive, you must make space. Space in your heart. Space in your thoughts. Space in your emotions. This means letting go of the chatter that says, it's not happening, it's taking too long, or I need to do more. That is noise from a mind that has forgotten its place. You are the vessel. Stay open, stay clear, and stay faithful. Speak the end, feel the end, live in the end, and leave the unfolding to the one who never fails. The power is not in your force, it's in your faith. The current that moves mountains flows through you, not from you. So rest in this truth. You don't have to create the outcome. You only have to believe in it. And belief, when pure and consistent, is always enough. There comes a moment in every life when belief grows quiet, when dreams seem too distant, prayers feel unanswered, and hope becomes a memory rather than a flame. You begin to live from memory instead of vision. You repeat routines not because they fulfill you, but because they're safe. Somewhere along the way, your belief, the very spark that once made life feel alive, fades into the background. But here is the truth. It only takes one decision to reignite it. Revive your belief and you revive your life. You don't need more time, more money, or better circumstances to change your life. What you need is a deeper alignment with what you once dared to believe. Not the watered-down version shaped by disappointments and delays, but the pure vision that once stirred your soul. That belief, no matter how long it has slept, still lives within you. And when it awakens, the impossible starts to bend in your favor. Miracles are not random. They are not rare gifts for a chosen few. Miracles are the natural outcome of unwavering belief. They appear not when the world says yes, but when you do. When you say, I believe again, everything begins to shift. Doors you never saw open begin to swing wide. Connections arise from nowhere. Strength returns, peace settles in. Because belief doesn't just change your thinking, it changes your energy, and your energy changes everything around it. You may have been told to be realistic. You may have been mocked for dreaming too big. You may have prayed and waited only to see things fall apart. But none of that has the power to cancel what is still possible. Nothing that happened in your past has more authority than the faith you choose to reignite today. Your belief does not need evidence, it creates evidence. It does not follow what is seen, it leads what is seen. So do not wait for the world to give you a sign. You are the sign. Your decision to believe again sends a signal to the universe that you are ready to receive, that you are no longer living from wounds but from vision, that you are no longer shrinking in fear but standing in faith. Even if your belief has been battered by time, it is not dead. Even if your vision has been buried under disappointment, it can be resurrected. The moment you stop looking backward and start imagining forward, life begins to return to you. Passion reignites. Opportunities reappear. Purpose becomes clear. Because belief breathes life into everything it touches. So dare to believe again. not half-heartedly, not cautiously, but fully, boldly, with the same innocence and wonder you once had before fear crept in. Speak your desire, feel it, imagine it real, and refuse to let go, even when nothing outside confirms it. Because when belief is reignited, the impossible bows, mountains move, the closed open, the dead dream lives again, and life, once dim, becomes radiant with new possibility, all because you chose to believe again. In this journey of life, we are not called to figure everything out. We are called to believe, not to chase, but to rest in the certainty that what we seek is already being prepared. Your faith is the foundation upon which the impossible becomes possible. Every time you dare to imagine the end, assume it real, and walk in alignment with it, you invite divine power to work through you. So let this be your reminder. You are not alone. You are not powerless. You are not limited. You are the vessel of the unseen, the carrier of vision, and the believer in what the world cannot yet see. When you choose to believe again, even after all you've been through, the impossible must yield. Miracles are not distant. They are near, waiting for your belief to make room for them. So close your eyes, feel it done, and walk as if it is already yours, because it is. Sincere thanks to the audience. Thank you for taking the time to listen, to reflect, and to open your heart once again to what is possible. May you leave with renewed faith, revived belief, and the unshakable knowing that the impossible is just the beginning of what God is ready to do through you. Stay in the feeling, live from the end, and watch your world transform.